In this video, you're going to know how to sell NFTs from your Shopify store. My name is Hakeem and I work for eBay as a Web3 developer. My mission is to teach you Web3 development in e-commerce. So let's begin. Now, first of all, why would you want to sell NFTs on a Shopify store? Let's go back over what an NFT is. An NFT is a non-fungible token, which means it's a unique identifier on the blockchain and can never be changed. So in Shopify's case, you could accompany this NFT with a product or service that will act as a receipt or proof of purchase, right? And because it's an NFT, you have many other perks that come with it, such as royalties, token gating, so only certain holders of the NFT can buy or access certain parts of your store. But the biggest point is that NFTs serve as an authentic receipt. An example is a Rolex. Now, I don't have one, but if I did, and I had the original papers with me, that Rolex would be worth like 10 times the original value because it has the original papers with it. And the same would be true for an NFT that's accompanied with your product or service. What are the requirements? I will list them on screen right now and include them down in the description below. Now we can begin. So if you already have an existing Shopify app template or a backend prepared, you can skip to step 2, but I will start from scratch. So from your Mac OS screen, or if you're using Windows, you can use command prompt. Let's open up a terminal. We're going to open up a brand new Node project. Let's make a new directory. So let's call it Shopify NFTs. That already exists. Okay, NFTs backend. Okay, let's cd into it. And now let's do npm init-y. So this will create a package.json. And let's open up the VS Code. So now in our terminal, you would need to paste in this code to install the dependencies. Again, I'll include this in the description below. Right, so now let's create the actual index.js server. So index.js and paste in this code. So what we're doing here is we're creating a node server. So this is just a local host for now, but we will connect it to a ngrok tunnel so that we can expose the webhook endpoint here, and Shopify can then call it whenever a product is purchased, and then the NFT can get minted. So what we're doing right now is, again, starting the Express server, and we're using this crypto package here to create a hash. This is to make sure that the request that was sent was from a Shopify store and not some random malicious hacker. And all this here is just, again, checking for that. We don't have any NFT Web3 stuff just yet, but you'll see that in a few more moments. So I'm also going to add in NodeMon so we don't have to keep restarting the server every time we make a new change. So let's do npm I NodeMon, not NodeMan. And then in package.json, I'm going to make a new script. There we go. Thank you, Copilot. All NodeMon does is that every time you make a change in the server or any file, it will restart the server for you. Right, so I mentioned that we need to make sure that the request is coming from Shopify. And so we need to set up a webhook in the admin area. So let's head over to the browser and open up your Shopify admin dashboard. This is my development store. Make sure you have one. And then in the search bar, let's go and put in notifications. And let's scroll down. And you're going to see this create webhook. Now, I already have some set up here, but we're not going to use those. We're going to make a new one. So you want to head over to apps and sales channels and develop apps, create an app. And we're going to call it Shopify NFTs 2. Amazing name. And then in here, we need to configure the API. So all we need for our demonstration purposes is read orders and read products. So if we just type in products, so we need read products and read orders. and that's it. So once you've selected those two, and then in this Webhook subscriptions here, make sure you're on the latest API version. And that's everything. Hit save. Now head over to API credentials. Right, so you'll need these 3 keys that you're going to see in just a few moments. So let's click install app. And you'll need all of these in the environment variable in your server. Let's make a new environment.env. Perfect. Okay, so you also need 2 more environment variables. One for the private key, which should be your private key as a merchant, and the second one will be the collection address of your NFT. So if you haven't deployed an NFT contract already, I encourage you to check out my previous video where I show you how to do that. But if you do, like me, then I'm going to head over to my MetaMask. And here you'll see this Mint 2. Head over to Block Explorer. And there is a test NFT contract that I have here. And we want to take this contract address. So this is a collection address, not the proxy. So make sure you have the actual token contract address itself. And head back over to env. Let's call it NFT collection address. Right, and then now we need the private key. Oh yeah, it's over here. Export private key. So this is how you export your private key, by the way, and you just put in your password. Perfect. So you should have 5 environment variables in your .env file. Back in our index.js file, let's paste in these 2 imports at the top. So this is the third web SDK, which will give us the Web3 functionality for deploying and minting contracts. And then this is just the Shopify API that we need to actually verify it was called from Shopify and make and engage with the actual front end or the storefront. So I'm going to paste in some more code. As you can see, this is just some boilerplate here. Let's replace this if block with the actual Web3 functionality. Actually, I'm going to change a couple of things I deprecated here. So this is no longer a capital C, this is a lowercase. And here, this SDK.getAddition, SDK.getContracts, and then in the second parameter, you want to pass through the name. So as you can see, it gives us a list of options. And in my case, the contract that I've deployed is an NFT collection. So that's what I'm going to pass through. And once you pass through this second parameter, it actually typecasts this constant here, as you can see, to type NFT collection. And then in this for loop where we're minting the NFT based on how many, based on the quantity of products that the user has just ordered, you then have this mint2 method here. If I remove this and just don't have anything, it doesn't actually exist. As you can see, it becomes any. Oh yes, so you also need the site URL, so I forgot that. So you should have 6 environment variables, right? So mine is C3 mintify test. If you're not sure what it is, it'll be like the name of your development store. So it'll just literally be the URL basically of your development store. That's the actual environment variable we need to pass through to here. So now we can actually perform API calls to the front end. And then the Shopify order ID is the ID returned from the order. So the Shopify order ID is retrieved by calling the get method from the request object that's passed through from Shopify to this endpoint. And this header key of Shopify order ID is required in order to fetch it. And then the response that we get, again, is using this client object that we just created. And we want the JSON object returned, so datatype.json. And the path here is just to the actual specific order that we've just made. The next line is the array of items purchased. So here we have the response.body.order.line items. And then finally, we are instantiating the third web SDK. And as you can see, we're using the .from private key method. So that's why you have to make sure it's stored in a environment variable or somewhere safe. And we're using the Goerli testnet, so it's not a real mainnet, so it's using fake money. And then the NFT collection, as I mentioned earlier, is using the get contract, and we're passing through the collection address that's on chain and the NFT collection. Now in here is where it gets spicy. This is where we have a loop for the amount of items purchased. Now first we need to get the actual information of the product that's been ordered. We do this by performing a query using the client object again, but this time on the specific product itself, not the order. So the order is the macro, is like the entire process, but the product ID is the individual products that the customer has just purchased. And then after that, we have the metadata field. Now this is the most basic form of metadata. We have the name, description, and image, which is taken again from the products. And if you're not familiar with metadata, the metadata is actually what contains information about the NFT, and is typically stored in IPFS or Arweave or some form of decentralized network. Finally, we call the mint2 method, but as you can see, we don't actually have a proper address yet, because you're going to see in a moment how we can actually enable the customer to input an address and mint to that address. Right, so let's close off this. I just realized we have an error. There we go. So to deal with this field here, we said we wanted to enable the user to put in any wallet address that they want. So that means it's going to be a user-based input field. The way we achieve this is head back over to our admin area, and we're going to need to do some editing in the actual Liquid code itself. Now, let's head over to the online store. Click on edit theme or edit code. The main file that we're looking for is the product.liquid. So let's go and search for it. So it's called product.liquid. It's this main one here. Now, this looks like a lot of code, and it is. The best way to actually understand what this looks like is to head back over to your store. So mine is put right here. And what this template corresponds to is the page you're about to see right here. As you can see, I already have it coded in and it's not centered, but for demonstration purposes, this works pretty well. So every time a user goes to purchase a product or add it to their cart, they can also add in a wallet address. Obviously, the UX can be improved. And if you're not sure how this all lays out in the HTML, just simply open up the developer tools. So on Mac, it's Shift Command C. So as you can see, it says quantity form template. And if I head over to the Liquid code and I do Command F, and here is the actual form that corresponds to this quantity form here. So you want to find when the next when block starts, or just when this div tag is closed. So scroll down and you can see the div tag closes here, and this is where I've added in this field for the wallet address. Again, all of the code will be in my repo, so just head over down to the description and click on the link. From here, let's head back to the index.js, and I'm going to comment this out, paste this in. What we're doing here is we're looping through the properties array inside this body.order, and we are trying to find the object that contains a key value of wallet address. So the name must equal wallet address, and then we'll take in the value from that key, and that will be the user's inputted wallet address. And then we are then minting to that address. Right, so if you follow the tutorial to the T, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the server. Start. And now it's listening on port 3000, and I'm also going to host a ngrok tunnel, so make sure you have ngrok installed. You can do ngrok http 3000. So now the ngrok tunnel will be linked to our local host. And so what ngrok does is it exposes your local host environment or URL to the internet so Shopify can actually call it. So if we head back over to our Shopify admin and we go to notifications again, scroll down, and I'm going to create a new webhook. So we want it on the order creation and keep it as JSON. Now the URL will be our ngrok URL. Copy this ngrok URL and paste it in here. And the endpoint we have used is webhooks orders create. So you can just copy this and paste in here. And we want the latest API version. Hit save, and then we can send a test notification to make sure that everything's working. So yes, the order event has been received, but it looks like it's stopped here and it hasn't gone through this if check. Now, I'm not too sure why this is actually happening for me, but for you, what it should do is it should obviously pass through this if check, because all this is doing is making sure that the request was sent from Shopify, and it obviously was. So if I just remove this for now, obviously don't do this in the live environment. So even after removing the if check, I'm still getting some errors with this Shopify API NPM package. But for you, you may not have this error, especially if you already have an existing Shopify app. Just to summarize what you've done is you've created a endpoint that will listen for order creations. So whenever a user purchases a product, so it's not just when they put it into a cart, but when they actually purchase it and the money goes through and it's processed. And then you are minting an NFT directly to that user's address, unless they've manually inputted a wallet address they want to send it to. So for more Web3 tutorials, check out my other video on how to create a third web theme on Shopify.